Well, good afternoon, good evening. It is actually the evening. Welcome back to my channel once again, and it's me, Jordan Blake, as always. I've done exactly what I said I was not going to do on my initial video, if you've seen that, whereby I said I was going to give YouTube a proper go this time and actually stick to making content regularly. Did for a while, made 4 videos, I believe. Not made one in about 2 months. So I've done exactly what I said I didn't want to do yet again. I am committed though. I still am committed to making more content. It's just a case of whenever I think make a video, rather than talking myself out of it for some reason, I just need to do it. Obviously, there's an element of what do I want to make, etc., etc. But I thought this was quite a good idea because I've seen everyone on YouTube doing their versions of this recently. Now that it's the end of the season, and I thought I could do that because although I've never made the videos about predictions before for Championship, Premier League, etc., etc., I have kept 5 or 6 years. For the last 5 or 6 years, I've made a prediction on Twitter of Championship and Premier League tables. Just a tweet with an attached notes document, which I've got here and I've covered over at the moment. So effectively, you would have seen similar videos on YouTube from other people. I've got what I predicted, where they actually finished, and then the point scored bit is going to be basically what Spencer Owen does. I don't know if you've seen his videos where he basically, it doesn't matter if it's a negative or a positive increase or decrease in where they finished, it counts as a point scored. So if you predict a team to finish 24th and they finish 23rd, that would be 1 point, even though it's better than he predicted, or worse, it wouldn't matter. It's 1 point. So obviously, like a golf round, it's the lower the score, the better. And I'm hoping to get as low a score as possible. I think his best was 44 in a Prem prediction. So for a Championship prediction, I think maybe 55, something like that would be pretty good. Off the top of my head, I don't think I've done that well, but we shall see. I'll also say that I'll go along on the point score bit. I'll go along giving it a red or a green indication to say whether I think it's a good or bad. The total will be at the bottom, and we'll see how I go. So I watch a lot of Championship football, more than the Prem, but I think just through general mainstream media, I may know more about the Prem as a whole than I do about Championship. The ins and outs of Championships clubs, it's quite hard to follow because the managerial changes are quite often not as highly talked about as with the Prem team, so it's quite hard to follow sometimes. So I might not have the best knowledge. I know Callum Fowler for sure, but I'll talk in as much detail as I have for each club, basically. So, without further ado, let's look at what I predicted versus the real life outcome. I will say, don't know my editing. We're in a free version of Excel. I've knocked this table together, and we're just looking at the Championship table like this. But without further ado, let's move on. So, 24th place, I predicted Sheffield Wednesday. Now, I don't think this is a big shock because I think the way that they got into the Championship last season, where they had to come from down from a big deficit in the semi-final of the playoffs in League One against Peterborough, obviously getting rid of Darren Moore, which I think was a ludicrous decision at the time. They were on course for a really, really bad season. And then, masterstroke, they bring in Danny Roll, and it's one of the signs of the season for the Championship. I think as we can see, they ended up finishing in 20th place. The form at the end of the season: 3 wins and 2 draws, and they played some tough games in those 3 wins and 2 draws to stay in the division. And along with another manager we'll talk about a little bit later, I think bringing him in was what saved them, basically. And it's a case of sometimes you can make a managerial change and it can come back to haunt you. In Sheffield Wednesday's case this season, it was very much if they didn't get rid of the manager at the time, whose name escapes me, which shows how much of an influence he had. Of course, it was Xisco that they had in charge after Darren Moore. See his record: no wins and 8 draws. It was a horrendous start to the season. Obviously, then in came Danny Röhl, and 16 wins, 16 losses in a championship would be mid-table form. So it's a superb return, and that is exactly why they stayed in the division. So for me, it's a 4. They finished. It's not going to allow me to put a plus in because it's in Excel, but they finished 4 places better off than I predicted, and basically I've got to take a red on that. It's not a good prediction. If you predict a team to go down and they don't go down, that's not a good prediction. So first of all, Sheffield Wednesday, 24th. Next up, we have Rotherham. So, bit better this time. I predicted Rotherham would struggle. It's a team that I saw both times we played them last season as Cardiff. They were horrendous for large parts of last season. I'm going to give myself a green for this. This is a good prediction, I think. They were horrendous for large parts of last season. We went there in March last year, or maybe February last year. 1-0 up at half time, and we were fighting relegation. They weren't fighting relegation really quite to the same extent as us last season. And being 1-0 up at half time up there, hammered down at half time, and they called the game off, or the referee called the game off, and the result got taken away. We had to go back up there a few weeks before the end of the season on a Thursday. I didn't go to the original game. I went to the replayed game, and we won 2-1 with an 85th minute winner by Cedric Keeper, and it was basically the game that kept us in the league. Don't like to talk about it too much, but Cardiff basically would have gone down last season if it had not been for Reading's point deduction. So it was already bad, but that game against Rotherham basically kept us in the league. So I think they were destined to do badly this year. I thought they didn't have much to write home about. I think clubs that came into the division maybe had a better chance of doing well. Plymouth and Ipswich for sure. Obviously Sheffield Wednesday being the outlier by starting so poorly, but then bringing in the right manager. But yeah, I thought Rotherham were going to do badly. They finished 23rd. They finished 24th. I predicted them to be 23rd. It's not a bad prediction. The fact they were so bad, I think maybe I didn't predict. Then we have QPR. So much like with Danny Röhl, this was another case of going into the season with Gareth Ainsworth. I thought QPR had absolutely no chance. How they kept him in the job after the way that last season ended. You know, they basically got one result, if memory serves. They got an absolute shit-house result against Burnley at Turf Moor, one of the last games of the season, which helped keep them in the division last season with Gareth Ainsworth, and they were really poor under him. And they kept him on, and quite quickly it was clear that it wasn't going to work. And in all honesty, the only person that outdid Danny Röhl I say outdid Danny Röhl, like QPR were in a better position than Sheffield Wednesday were when Danny Röhl took over compared to when Martí Cifuentes took over. But Martí Cifuentes and Danny Röhl, both signings of the season for these clubs, because I think it's fair to say that, particularly for QPR, it would have been absolutely diabolical if they'd gone down into League One. Much like if Cardiff ever went down, it'd be the same sort of situation. And they brought in Martí Cifuentes, and they ended up finishing in 18th place. They tail off a little bit at certain times, but absolutely superb job in the games that he managed from the time he took over, and they stayed up quite comfortably. I know that they were only 6 points above relegation zone, but I think in the end nobody expected them to go down within the last month of the season. Really, they'd done a superb job to get to where they were and finish in 18th place. It looked bad on me. Another team that I predicted to get relegated that has not been relegated. So yet again, it's a bad result for me. They've ended up finishing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, they've ended up finishing 1, 2, 3, 4. Yet again, like Sheffield Wednesday, they've ended up finishing 4 positions above where I thought they would. So that's yet again got to be a red for me. Next up in 21st, just avoiding relegation, I predicted Plymouth. As we can look at the table, Plymouth actually finished bang on in 21st place, so that is a 0 and very much a great result for me. Now, this is very much a case of they were looking a lot better than that at certain points of the season. Steven Schumacher obviously left to go to Stoke, which probably hindered Plymouth, but I think from his point of view it's a better job. They never really recovered from him leaving, I don't think. They barely stayed in the division at the end. If we look like 1 point above the relegation zone, I think a draw last game of the season was enough to keep them in the league. They beat. So actually, I predicted them to go down in the last little run of the end of the season. I thought they might have got caught up in it because I thought that Birmingham were going to get a result. Thankfully, in a way, they didn't because poorly run club Birmingham. But yeah, Plymouth stayed up just. I predicted them to be 21st. They finished 21st, and they've now got Wayne Rooney, which I was thinking about this earlier. Like, I think I'm of the opinion that he may do a decent job for them. I think the job he did at Derby with limited resources, youngsters, like, it was a superb job. He didn't keep them in the division, but they had a points deduction of 8 points, I think it was, at the time, a couple of seasons ago. Went to DC United, didn't do that well, but it wasn't a bad job. Then, coming into a Birmingham team that were flying, and just not having a pre-season and everything, I think hindered him a lot. I think with a pre-season at Plymouth, he could build something like he had at Derby, and it could be a much, much better environment for him to succeed. I think that potentially Plymouth could do okay next season. Nothing, amazing, but okay. So next up, we have the team I've just talked about quite a lot, Birmingham. So I clearly predicted them to do quite badly. I thought they were going to finish in 20th. That was with John Eustace, who'd already had a season there prior and had done okay at kind of getting them to play solid championship football from what I saw of them. I predicted they'd struggle. Turned out they struggled a lot more because while 8th in the championship they sacked John Eustace, or 7th in the championship they sacked John Eustace and bring in Rooney. Clearly just wanted a name. Ambition sometimes can be a fault, and it was definitely a fault in that scenario. If they'd kept John Eustace, they probably wouldn't have ended up finishing in the relegation places where they did finish, because it was indeed 22nd place in the end after having to sack Wayne Rooney. Thereafter they bring in Tony Mowbray. Tony Mowbray did actually a good job. I think he won 4 of 12 or something like that, 6 of 12 maybe in his time, but then he had some sort of medical issue to step away. I think they had Gary Rowett for a little while towards the end of the season, but it was a sinking ship. It's a poorly run club. From the moment they originally sacked Gary Rowett, probably for the football he was playing, but it keeps you in the division. They were doing quite well at the time. Top 10, I believe they were, and they sacked Gary Rowett in the beginning years ago for Zola. That didn't help. They finished 17th in the end, I think. So it's been a poorly run club for a long time. Having big superstar owners like Tom Brady isn't going to change that if the football side is poor. And it's come back to cost them. They've gone down. And I'm kind of glad to see it because, not for the fans, fans don't deserve to be run so poorly, but for a team that is run as poorly as Birmingham, they probably have had too many seasons where they've stayed in the division despite being run so poorly, and now it's come back to bite them and they've gone down to League One. And on my side, a case of the fact that they were going to be poor and I just didn't predict them to be that poor. So as a result, they've finished 2 places lower than I anticipated. I'm still going to be harsh. I mean, this is just purely aesthetic anyway, but I'm going to be harsh on myself and say that's a bad decision by me, even though it's only 2 places out, because they got relegated and I didn't think they would be. So that's still a poor indicator from myself. So, next, we have them lot. Don't even want to say their name. But, yeah, I thought losing Russell Martin, though, let's be fair, what did he achieve? He's got to the Prem now, but £200 million squad. He should be getting to the Prem with that team with Southampton. He was mid, like 18th and 12th, I think, with MK Dons in League One. He finished something like 16th and 10th or something with Swansea. Why he gets good jobs, I don't know. Like, he plays good football, but is that everything? I'm kind of the opinion maybe sometimes is, but either way, them lot, I said they'd finish 19th. They ended up finishing in 14th, quite close to us after having a poor start of the season. I was quite happy when they had Michael Duff because it was such a change from Russell Martin's style. I thought, yeah, that's not going to work for them. And it was a bit of a mid-season. They brought in Luke Williams. They've done okay towards the end of the season. You know, the form was alright. They went on a bit of a run. Not really scared of them for next season either. But not going to say any more about them because I don't want to. But basically, quite a poor prediction because it was 5 out. So, on that one, I've got to give myself a red. Well, after the previous bad one, I've got to go for another bad one because I predicted Huddersfield to finish 18th. They had Neil Warnock. And I was quite surprised that they kept him because I thought he did his usual thing where he came in towards the end of the season. He saved them from relegation last season quite comfortably in the end. I mean, they came down to the Cardiff City Stadium, second last game of last season, and they were superb. They just wanted it so much more, and we were actually still fighting relegation. They weren't, and they just played us off the park basically. But I could never not back Warnock to keep them in the division. That they would have been fine, I think, with him. Like still 18th because limited resources. Way, way worse than what he would have had with Cardiff when he took us up by surprise. But obviously he didn't last long. I get why they wanted to go down the route of going for Darren Moore because that was someone who's good championship manager that became available, and they could have had him on a long-term contract, but obviously that didn't work either. And then another manager again who I can't even remember his name. So they had John Worthington, which I assume is an interim, and then they had Andre Brighton Reiter, who clearly didn't have an effect. It's not showing his results there, but clearly didn't have the desired effect because they ended up having poor form at the end of the season and going down quite clearly behind Birmingham in the end at the end. So I didn't anticipate them being so poor because of the Warnock effect. But at the end of the season, it ended up being a really poor thing. Huddersfield got relegated. They were 5 positions worse off than I thought they would be. So that's another poor result on my part, and it has to be down as a red. Next, we have Bristol City. Bristol City, they're just one of those clubs. They just finish mid-table every season. I don't like them either because I'm a Cardiff fan. I don't want to talk about them any longer than I have to. So we're going to say they finished 11th. They finished above Cardiff, actually. So it is what it is. But they finished 6 places above where I thought they would. As such, it's got to be a poor one on my part. And I'm going to fly through in the next few teams because it's all mid-table. There's not much to talk about. But they're all, hopefully, not remembering some of the teams where I've put them. They're all going to be, hopefully, there or thereabouts of what I thought. So, 16th, I predicted Preston. In the end, they finished in 10th. Their form was horrendous to end the season. They started the season really well. They were in the top 6 for a lot of the first period of the season, and then they just fell off completely towards the end. So it's another bad prediction of -6 for me. Sorry, +6. They finished 6 positions better off than I anticipated. It's another red indicator. It's poor from me. So 15th, I predicted Stoke. Now, obviously, they got Steven Schumacher in after Alex Neil got sacked. It was poor from Alex Neil. I think it was pretty poor from Steven Schumacher for large parts. If you look at the end of season form for them, they picked up a bit to save themselves. They were still only 6 points above the relegation zone. And it was quite tetchy for them going into the last few games of the season. But you managed to get a few results there. Like I said, the 3 in a row really helped them stay up. I predicted them to finish 15th. They finished 17th. It's not a bad indicator, too much of a bad indicator. But still, it's 2 better off. And for that, I'm going to give myself a good, because I think that was a good indication. I said they'd be lower mid-table, or bang in the middle of the table, really, and that's where they were. So 14th, we have my beloved Cardiff City. We effectively got relegated outside of Reading's deduction last season, as I mentioned earlier. The season before that, we finished 18th, I believe, but it was a very poor season once again. Obviously, started the season with Mick McCarthy, had 9 losses in a row. Really hated that season. Steve Morrison turned it around towards the end. We had some really good loan players like Cody Drama, Alfie Doughty, Tommy Doyle, like these players you'd know now from like playing in the Prem. We had them like the season for last. Then last season we, like I said, effectively got relegated, but didn't because of the points deduction for Reading. So it was, I thought we'd show progress under Errol Bullitt, and we have. We finished in 12th, so 2 positions better off than I anticipated. But if you look at some of the key numbers, we drew very few games. We lost more than we won. And we had a very poor negative goal difference. So, I'm kind of the opinion that I'm indifferent about, I'm not against him staying. There was a period of the season where I really did want him to leave. I thought it was really bad. We then went on a run of 5 without losing, which helped, but the football still wasn't great. We beat Ipswich in that run, and we played really well that day. But there was a lot of poor performances this season. The performances weren't great throughout the season. There's an element of, he does need better players, but there was building blocks, and I predicted us to finish 14th. We finished 12th. It was a good prediction, I think. So, because, at the end of the day, we could have had another poor relegation threatened season, and we didn't nowhere near this relegation zone. We were 12 points above the relegation zone. So, I'm happy with that. Cardiff were safe, and my prediction was not too bad. So, a little bit of a bad one here. Hull City, I predicted would finish 13th. Now, Liam Rosenior had done a good job when he came in from the season before, and the thing I think that factored into my decision to put him here was the fact that they had, under him in the season before, they'd been very 1-1 or 1-goal wins. They were very close games. Like, the football he was playing was really good. But I just thought that maybe that would lead to a mid-table season, because they'd be very much, they could win a game 1-0 or they could draw a lot of games. And in the end, they drew not that many and they won a lot, but they were only 8 points above Cardiff, and Cardiff played some really poor football. But they did end up finishing in 7th place. It was a really good season. Obviously then they sacked Liam Rosenior afterwards, which was shocking. But I guess the thing that factored into them finishing so high, the players they had were really good. Philogene I'd seen at the end of last season for Cardiff was really, really good. And getting in for 5-0 was a snip. And then obviously from January onwards they had Fabio Carvalho, who just having those two in the Championship was ridiculous, and they didn't get the playoffs, and they probably should have. So, I mean, if you look at the end of season form, they didn't do enough really. Too many draws. I have to mention they didn't have that many draws, but yeah. So they ended up finishing 6 positions above where I thought. So it's another poor one from me, to be honest, and it has to go down as a red. One poor into another poor, because I predicted Blackburn to finish 12th. Obviously, John Dahl Tomlinson had left throughout the season, which didn't help. John Eustace came in, did enough to keep him in the league. 2 wins in the last 5. Really poor season for Blackburn. I think they were top off until around Christmas, and they just fell like a stone. And he did a good job to keep him in the league when Dahl Tomlinson left. But they ended up being 19th. And as such, it's a really poor guess from me, because they were 7 places below where I thought. So that's a poor one again. Same sort of problem as they had the season before. They've scored far more goals. I say far, but they've scored more goals than Cardiff. Their goal difference better than Cardiff's. Cardiff finished 12th. Blackburn finished 19th. They were the same the season before. I think their goal difference was around even the season before. They scored a lot, but they conceded a lot, even though they finished in the top 8, I think, last season. Top 10 for sure. I thought they'd finish 12th, regress a little bit, some better teams in the league, and they didn't. They finished in 19th. So it's a poor one from me. The poor ones keep coming because I've got Ipswich in 11th, and it's going to be a poor score. But the prediction, I think at the time, like, I think the credit I've got to give myself, and I've heard people speak about how good Ipswich were in League One. People saying they're the best League One side they've ever seen. And obviously you would say, like, Plymouth finished above them. Like, Plymouth went up as champions, so why would Ipswich thought so highly of? But it's the football that they play. Plymouth outscored everyone in League One. Game to game, I think Ipswich may have scored more. But I just thought Ipswich played better football, more sustainable football. There is a case to say that's not true, because if we look at the table, Ipswich's goal difference is not as good as Leicester, even though Leicester had a poor run for a while. Ipswich had a lot of games where, 2-1, 3-3, 1-1, 3-2. There's a 6-0 there, yeah, fine. But 2-1, Cardiff beat us. Cardiff beat them 2-1. 3-2, 3-1, 4-3 against Rotherham as well. 3-2. They very much like they outscore opponents. They beat opponents by a goal. But they concede a lot. But they were just unbelievable at winning games. They were unbelievable at winning games, scoring goals. Football they play is really good. Kieran McKenna's now obviously being touted for United, Chelsea, Brighton, perhaps. Really good jobs. Part of me hopes he stays. I'm so glad they went up. As a Cardiff fan, I mean, we all hate Leeds, don't we? And I hate Russell Martin, so I didn't want Southampton to go up, but unfortunately they did. But I predicted them to finish 11th. But if we see that I predicted Sheffield Wednesday bottom and I predicted Plymouth 21st, I've done quite well with those two promoted teams, and I thought Ipswich were the pick of the bunch, but I only said 11th, and that was my downfall. So Ipswich actually finished in second. For me, it's a poor result. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out, and as such, that's got to go down as a red. And these numbers are looking bad in the point scoring system. Really bad. So in 10th, they had Coventry, playoff final losers from last season. They ended up finishing in 9th, so it was a pretty good prediction, to be fair. I'll give myself a green on that one. Being one out, it's not like they were in the playoffs, and I didn't say they were in the playoffs. They lost the playoff final last season. I thought they would be a little bit of a drop-off. They lost Gyökeres, obviously, which is a big loss for them. And he's gone on to do superb things. So good one for me, really. The FA Cup run probably didn't help them, and I've been one out on that regard. So on to the next. So in ninth, I predicted Middlesbrough. They actually finished in eighth. So again, it's a good prediction. Add commentary in there as well. It's a good prediction. They started the season really poorly. I thought they were going to keep going like the way they did last year. They were superb last season under Michael Carrick when he came in. Took them from the bottom three to basically challenge for the playoffs. Did they get the playoffs? Can't remember. It's been 2 seasons since then, effectively. So that's yeah. But they started the season really poorly. They were bottom for a while, and then they just flew again. And like I say, at the end of the season, they finished in eighth. They were close to getting playoffs, and still a really good manager, I think, Michael Carrick, and I think they'll probably do better than this next season, depending on some of the business they do. But for me, ninth, it's one better. I've got to once again give myself a green on that one. In eighth, I went for Millwall. This is another poor one. They actually finished in 13th, which is only because of the form they showed at the end of the season. 5 wins in a row, and Neil Harris, coming back into the club. They left for Cardiff. Well, he left and came to Cardiff originally. And the Guy Rowett, I have no doubt they would have still been that sort of team. They've been consistently in and around the top 10 and the Guy Rowett for a few years, and I thought they'd be there again. They play typically Millwall football. Terrible. Horrible football, but it gets success. And like with Neil Harris coming in there, Joe Edwards wasn't doing the job. Neil Harris came in, 5 wins on the bounce towards the end of the season. They were never troubled by relegation when he came in, because you say like 5 wins in a row, still only 9 points clear of relegation. So it shows what a job he did when he came in. And it's poor from me because I thought that they would be 8th, but the thing about in season is we can't predict the managerial changes, so it's going to be a red, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. So in 7th, I predicted Leicester. Really poor prediction. I think of the relegate sides, I just thought they'd be the ones that would struggle the most. I thought, with the financial situation they were in, I think they had that 8th highest wage budget in the Prem and got relegated, which really would have hurt them, which is obviously why they've got financial sanctions potentially coming in the Prem, points deductions coming in the Prem related to FFP. I just thought that they would be the team that would struggle most with being relegated. Didn't happen. They were the ones who did the best with being relegated because they came top. Now, obviously, bringing in Enzo Maresca was a masterstroke. He's done a wonderful job with them, and now he looks like he's going to Chelsea as of today. It looks like it's pretty much a done deal that he'll be going to Chelsea. So that's done me in as well. Yeah, not a good look. They had a bad run during the season, and even at the end of the season, they did what they needed to do to stay top, but it looked like they were going to be the best championship team of all time throughout this first half of the season, and then they tailed off a little bit. But champions, and I predicted them 7th. Yeah. 6th, I predicted West Brom. Now, Cobran is a wonderful manager. I think he did a fantastic job at Huddersfield. And he's doing a superb job at West Brom. I predicted them 6th. They came 5th. It was pretty much bang on. I thought they'd be safely a playoff team with him. I think, their squad, compared to the other teams in the top 6 this season, they have the weakest squad by a mile. They're basically the best coach team in the league, I think. I think Mark Robins, maybe Michael Carrick would have something to say about that, given the resources at their disposal too. But West Brom don't spend money. Daryl Dike has been missing for like 2 seasons, and Carlos Cobran has got West Brom playing consistently playoff formed football, and he's done it again this season, and it's a superb job. Probably weren't ever going to trouble Southampton in the playoffs, although they did take the draw in the first game at home, and probably should have won that game in fairness. But yeah, West Brom, superb job from Cole Brown again, and it's actually a good prediction from me too. So get a green on that one. So it's another poor one. Tony Mowbray, Sunderland, I think all season, maybe not that high up, although teams like West Brom and Coventry and Hull had wobbles, and like that's where Middlesbrough nearly got in. Sunderland actually finished 16th. So it's very poor from me. But as I say, with Tony Mowbray, like they finished in the playoffs last season. They lost to Luton, who went on to the Prem. It's a young side. Joe Bellingham went there, and they were, he's showing the season he's a good player. I think he would have got really good, even better, with Tony Mowbray if he'd stayed there all year. Sunderland's a mess. Michael Beale came in, didn't go well. He's gone already. They now don't have a manager. It looks like potentially they might get like a Will Still in. So we'll see how that affects them next season. But poor, very poor prediction from me. So they finished 16th. I had them in 5th. So it's actually a -11, which hurts badly. And it hurts as badly as predicting Watford to finish 4th. Sorry. I just thought Ishmael had done a good job in the league before, particularly with Barnsley. He had Barnsley in the playoffs, and since then he's done nothing of note. Like, he went to Besiktas. I don't think he won anything, and then he came back to the Championship and went to West Brom. I think that's the right timescale. That didn't go well, and then he's now at Watford, and he's not at Watford anymore. And Tom Cleverley's now their manager. But I just thought he would do a good job. They're good players still. Oh, that's a bad one. Watford actually finished in 15th. And it's another -11, which is going to hurt badly. You could have made a case for Sunderland. Watford, poor. Very poor. 3rd, I had Leeds. So, again, it's actually bang on. That one. So that's a nice green 0, which is going to help the overall score. Not much to say about Leeds. They got one of the best sides in the league. Daniel Farke has done it before. I thought they'd finish 3rd. They did. They didn't go up by the playoffs. We all hate Leeds. What can I say? With the table, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I predicted Norwich to finish 2nd. They've got a really good squad. They had a good manager who's done it before with Huddersfield. I thought they'd go up. I did. And in reality, they ended up finishing in 6th, which is poor. Considering they finished below West Brom, I think the other, the teams that finished in the top 4 outside of Ipswich had better squads than Norwich. So if Norwich had finished 3rd and the Leeds and Leicesters of the world had finished 1st and 2nd, I would have been spot on. I just thought maybe Norwich could have done better with David Wagner than they did. They ended up finishing in 6th. It's a -4. It's got to be a red because I had them up for automatic promotion. They finished in the playoffs. But it was there or thereabouts. I thought they'd be at the top. And then, of course, finally, that means that I predicted Southampton to finish top. Now, in hindsight, I'm wondering why I did, because I cannot stand Russell Martin. And obviously now they have actually been promoted via the playoffs, so they finished 4th in the end. Not top. I am not sure what I was thinking, basically, because hindsight's a wonderful thing. Like, in my current mind, knowing what happened, I think, why would I ever have predicted Southampton to be the best of those teams? But clearly, I did at the time. And I thought maybe like Martin's football, as much as I slated earlier on, I thought, his football with the players at his disposal, he'd get them playing the most consistent football. And there were times during the season when they had that little run where the teams above them at the end of the season started tailing off. I thought there's a chance that they could get in you, and I could look like a genius. Not that I remember that I predicted them to finish first anyway. But then they shit the bed and lost 3 of the last 5 after the run that they had. And they had an unbeaten sequence before that in the season as well. So it only goes down as a -3, because they finished 3 positions lower than I thought. But it's still a red because I predicted them to finish top, and they've actually finished in 4th. Gone up via the playoffs, so I got to give myself a little bit of credit. They have got promoted, and I predicted them to get promoted. But not being a playoff team, I predicted them to finish top, and they didn't. So, let's tot up the total and see how I did. So, I've done the calculations, and this total score is 102. Now, that basically means that across the entire league, I'm 102 positions out across every team, which is horrendous. But I think compared to a Premier League prediction where there's 20 sides, there's obviously 4 more sides to predict in this league, which adds connotations there. And it's basically these 2 11s which has made it really bad. If we take away the 2 11s, which obviously we're not going to do and we can't do, we take away the 2 11s, it's 80. Now 80 I don't think would be that bad. There's some good predictions there, but if you look across the board, I'm being harsh on myself for a lot of them as well, but look across the board, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 24 I'm saying I've done well on. There's lots of 6s and 7s. I think the Championship is notoriously difficult to predict. The fact that I've got 2 absolutely spot on I think is good. I think Leeds being 3rd, I don't think many people would have predicted Leeds to be outside of the top 2, and I did. I think predicting West Brom to be playoff team, I think these 2 was a good one, and I think predicting Plymouth to be bang on 21st was really good. I think the fact that I've been marked so harshly on Ipswich, having them 11th from League One, that's a bold prediction I think, and I've still been stung massively because of how good they were. But I think I'm going to have to give myself a red. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to come back and do the same for my Premier League predictions, which I think could potentially be worse, if it is at all possible. Watford, Sunderland, why? But if you did enjoy it, please leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment about your predictions, and I'll be back with my Championship predictions on a video later in the year, which will be a lot easier to go back and reference. I won't have to do any of this. I could do, but I probably won't. Anyway.